Hello, everyone. I'm Deidre Desir, special contributor to Business Publications and DSM Magazine. And I want to welcome you to our Lifting the Veil series called Life Transformed. Last year, we launched a Lifting the Veil mental health series called Life Interrupted, which was so well received that we brought it back, but to focus now on looking at the mental health effects of multiple disruptions over the course of 2020 and 2021. And what you can do going forward to transform your life for the better. Today's program is called Moms on the Edge. Now that may sound a bit dramatic. Mind you, we're not talking about moms falling off, but literally moms are on the edge. And there's a balancing act that 2020 has brought us. Last year took us to some unfamiliar places and produced unfamiliar experiences. While we realized that the last 12 months was a challenge for everyone, including the family unit, the pandemic had a jolting effect on women. As parents who are responsible for their household and as women who work, they fell disproportionately to the female population, which many women, even as a result, had to leave the workforce. And so I am going to make an adjustment here to turn my camera on for you all. I apologize. So let's get back to it. Moms on the edge. Now, according to, can you all see me okay now?
Now we can.
Sorry about that. I am so sorry about that. All right, I'm not a mom, but apparently I'm on the edge today, folks. So let's hop back into the program really quickly here. Stress, anxiety, and burnout have become chronic for many women trying to manage it all, while other women have elected to leave the workforce to find balance and to focus on their family. Today's program will focus on how these events transform women's mental health, plus offer some useful advice and resources that could be helpful. Just to do some housekeeping, there are a few details that we want to go over, Zoom details, of course. If for any reason we lose power, which happened last week, just as soon as we get back on, log back on. If your line drops off, just log back on. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat. Please drop them in as you think of them, and we'll make sure that we get those questions to our special guests. Before we start, I'd like to thank a few groups. First of all, thanks to the DSM team who worked tirelessly to create and execute this series. From concept to stories to finding experts, from designing slides, working with sponsors, and promoting this program, the DS team and the BPC staff made these programs possible, but we also want to thank Susanna DeBaca and Connie Weimer for believing in this type of programming and making it available to each and every one of us. The DSM team does an outstanding job on many things, including their work on this program, Lifting the Veil. In addition to this series, they've created the annual Lifting the Veil publication. If you have not seen it, go online and the address is listed right there so you can get your copy. If you'd like to order your copy, you can call 515-288-4582 and they'll make sure that a copy is made available to you. That's a publication that I think each and every one of us should have in our hands. We also want to thank our sponsors who have made this event possible. Our supporting sponsor, Delta Dental, our another supporting sponsor, Clyde Behavioral Health, a division of Mercy One. We also want to thank the sustaining sponsor, Employee and Family Resources of Iowa. And again, another supporting sponsor, IMT Insurance. Today, we'll be focusing on moms and how they can successfully navigate the mental health strains of this pandemic. Here is how the program will work. I'll introduce our expert guests. We have a fun-filled panel for you today, and I'm going to ask them a question. These questions that we're asking were delivered, or the questions that we're asking were pre-recorded from people throughout the community. I'll share that question with our expert panel, and they will have a chance to discuss those questions. Now, mind you, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. I want to introduce our guests now. First, we are joined by Christina Smith. Hello, Christina. She is the president and CEO of Community Support Advocates, a local nonprofit supporting individuals and families living with disabilities and mental health issues. She has over 28 years of experience supporting and advocating for individuals with disabilities or mental health issues. And as a parent to a daughter and son who live with chronic illnesses, she uses her personal experiences as a parent to support other parents and to advocate for others. We're also joined by Sharane Connor. She is currently working as a mental health and addictions therapist in private practice at Thriving Families Counseling Services right here in the Des Moines Metro. And she's an adjunct instructor for the University of Iowa School of Social Work and Simpson College. She has a background working in diverse populations in an array of settings. Finally, we have Dr. Amy Schreiber. Dr. Amy Schreiber is a general pediatrician at Blank Children's Pediatric Clinic and an assistant professor of specialty medicine at Des Moines University. She is the medical director of the statewide nonprofit Reach Out and Read, which partners with pediatric primary care providers to give books and shared reading guidance to children and families at health maintenance visits. Thank you so much to our experts for joining us. How y'all doing today? Wave to everybody. You can go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Hello.
Hi,
Awesome.
thanks for having me today.
So good to see your faces. So we've got question number one, folks. Now we're gonna let you watch this clip and then we'll pop back in to see all of our experts and hear you all out on how to answer this first question.
Mom are taking more and more responsibility and feeling more and more stress at work, especially during the pandemic. So how can we take good care of our physical health as well as our mental health at work?
Thank you, Ms. Mandelbaum. As a business leader in the community, that is a great question. How do we help? How do we help our moms in taking responsibility and feeling more stress, but also taking care of themselves at the same time? And Dr. Schreiber, you've been working with a great deal of parents and their children, and so you've been able to see stress on both sides of the issue. What would be your remarks to moms as it relates to balancing this?
Well, I'm so grateful to be here today, not only to engage in a really important conversation about mental health and well-being, but as a working mom, I'm just waiting for other pieces of guidance and advice because, you know, when COVID hit, I couldn't believe how many ways it affected me both physically and mentally. And, you know, having to show up in clinic and gown up and mask up, it created a lot of irritability in my life and a lot of stress that I wasn't even aware of. So having this conversation, acknowledging the stress, you know, coming up with ways that we can support each other, both physically and mentally, is really important. Specifically, the topic of moms had not occurred to me. I mean, it had, of course, because I see moms all the time in my clinic and they were all very stressed out. And really the key factor about moms is that they're always thinking about other people. And they rarely take the time to really say, oh my gosh, how am I doing? Check in with myself. So I have a couple of doctor friends. So I went to see my own doctor during COVID and I was like, how are you doing? Checking in with you. And my doctor's a working mom too. And she's like, you know, COVID has really, the brunt of all of this stress has really fallen on us women. And I was like, wow, I had never heard that articulated before. And I was like, you're right. I forgot that we are the ones doing the work at work oftentimes, and then doing the work at home and trying to navigate how to take care of our kids, making sure that they're not suffering. And so we get ourselves lost in the shuffle. So that was quite striking to me, was like, you're right, moms are the ones who are taking the brunt of the stress and never taking the time to think about themselves. So I spend a lot of time talking to moms about their children and how to support their children. But if you yourself need support, you can't be your best self for your kids. So it's really important to take the time to acknowledge your stress, to really understand how COVID has changed your life and affected it, and then to think about ways that you can support yourself physically and mentally. So one of the basics that I always talk about are the 7 domains of health. These are important for all of us to do every day, but sometimes during COVID, it's life interrupted and we have let 1, 2, or even 3 of these areas slip a little bit. So the first one is good nutrition. Obviously, like when you're stressed out, you might not make the best nutrition choices, or sometimes the nutrition's not available to you for whatever reason. So focusing in on taking the best care of yourself means getting the best nutrition. Second is sleep. Parents and especially moms are notoriously bad sleepers because they might have 1, 2, or 3 kids snuggled next to them, or are up worrying about what's going to happen next to themselves or their kids. So finding ways that you can improve your sleep is really important for your overall well-being. The third is getting moving. And I'm not asking for miracles. I don't think that we have to go from couch to 5K in any sort of way, but the movement of our bodies is good for our mind, body, and soul. So finding ways to enjoy increased movement and activity is going to create a better sense of balance and well-being. But you don't have to stress yourself out. You don't have to say, I'm not doing enough exercise. This isn't enough. Like, just take it one step at a time, baby step it, and do just a little bit and try to make it fun. And, if you can include your kids in that, then that's great too, because guess what? They need to get moving too. And then you've just killed 2 or 3 birds with that one stone, because you're moving and you're spending quality relationship time and you're out in nature. So the other two of the other 7 domains include relationship building. And so if you're going through adversity, which we all are, never go through it alone. Always make sure you're building your team of your best players that are taking good care of you, right? You can't play football if you're just one person. You need to have the team of people who are your best players. So who's supporting you, moms? Is it your spouse? Is it your work family? Or is it your kids? Is it your best friend? Is it your church? Is it your neighborhood groups that you hang out with? Is it somebody on Facebook that you're friends with? You need to gather your team together to get that emotional support.
And it's okay to have a team, right? It's okay, because some folks think they got to carry it on their back, right?
Yes, I think a lot of us assume that we need, if there's a tough time, we have to be strong and do it by ourselves. And it's really truly the opposite every time, 100%. If you're going through stress, never go through it alone. I actually learned that in residency, because you kind of go from medical school and all of a sudden you're the doctor, and boy, that's a big shockaroo. And so they're like, if you feel like you're over your head, don't do that by yourself. Call everyone in to help you do your best job. It's better for you. It's better for your kids. It's better for the people you're taking care of. So yeah, having a team is best. And we talk about it a lot just in my practice too, is if I have a child who needs a referral to a different doctor, I'm like, well, guess what? Your team of medical professionals grew, and that's good for you. And now you have more people looking out for you, more people taking care of you, and you're not alone. And that's so important, never to feel alone. One of the greatest child psychologists of all time, Jerry Paul, said, everyone deserves the experience of being held in someone else's mind. And moms need that too. We need to know that other people are thinking of us, that they're caring about us, and that they're at times concerned about us. And so having those relationships and making them quality and meaningful is important. It turns out that through my work, I've discovered the meaning of life. And the meaning of life is about relationships. It's all about relationships. We are physiologically wired as infants to grow and learn through relationships. And we know this because the lack of good relationships means that you don't grow and develop normally. So when you're experiencing high quality, loving, trusting relationships, you always grow better. So that's really a very important ingredient in taking care of yourself, both physically and emotionally. Nature, I mentioned, our bodies need nature. And then finally, doing a mental health check-in every day. And my physician friend made up this new catchphrase that I've been using a lot, and it's called check on you, check on two. That means I'm waking up in the morning. What do I need today to be my best self? Do I need help? Do I need support? And then check on to people that you care about, whether they're your friends, your colleagues, your spouse, your neighbors, and say, how are you doing? I'm just checking in on you because I care about you.
Awesome. Great feedback. So Christina, I'm going to go to you next because as Dr. Schreiber mentioned, even early on in the conversation, she sees women in her waiting room that are used to doing so much for others. And so when we see women and moms pouring out for others, how are they getting refilled? Because, that vessel has to be sustained, has to be, at least refilled in order for us to do more. How do you suggest moms navigate finding ways to do that?
Well, I love what Dr. Schreiber said, because I think as caregivers, we naturally don't give ourselves permission to do that. I mean, we're so focused on filling other people up, and we never prioritize ourselves, right? And so, but I think one of the very first steps is to give ourselves permission and to kind of flip that internal dialogue, that self-care is family care. And if we can't be okay, if we're not okay, both physically and mentally strong, then we're not going to be able to be there for our family. And I think as women, we're so complex, and that whole kind of negative dialogue that we have with ourselves. I mean, hopefully I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one that has that. And that kind of, where we almost feel guilty when we take time away from our family to take care of ourselves. And so I think that's the first step, Deidre, is to flip that dialogue on ourselves. And so when I am sitting with family or friends and I try to do it with myself as well, is to catch that dialogue. And what would you say to your good friends or your sister or whatever when they're not taking care of themselves? And so, first, remember that, self-care is family care, and that's just as important. You make sure your kiddos have everything that they need, or your spouse, you need to have everything that you need. And then also remember that your brain is an organ, right? And so your mental health or your brain health is just as important as your physical health. And so it's okay for us to be stressed out, and it's okay to not be okay, and to own that. But it's also, we need to take care of that brain health and get help when we need it. And sometimes that is just to reach out and to get help. And so it's just as important. So for any of you guys out there who need it, because I was needing that earlier this week, go make the dentist appointment for yourself, go make the mammogram appointment for yourself. And if you're needing it, go reach out for mental health support, because, we always put ourselves last on the list. And so go do what you need, or even if it's just go take a walk or start exercising or whatever it is that you've been putting off for yourself because you're not prioritizing yourself, go do it today, because maybe that's the first step.
Yeah, there's a person in the chat that said their therapist told them that when you feel like you need to do more or be more, you actually should probably do less and go do something for yourself. Sharane, can you talk to me a little bit and build off of what Christina said earlier? Because women are hard on each other, but primarily because we're hard on ourselves first, even harder on ourselves. How do we balance, speaking life into ourselves rather than harping on all of the mistakes that we made, and usurping the mistakes of our children and our family members as if they're our own.
Yeah, you're so right. We as women, I think for some reason have been taught from a very young age that we are made to be these strong, we're do no harm, to anything except ourselves. We tend to beat up ourselves way more than we tend to beat up anything else. And that's wrong. It's a wrong way of thinking. And so I really like what Christina said as far as just making sure that you're thinking of yourself as a primary. I even will tell my clients, especially my moms, they hate this, but I'll say, when was the last time you were selfish? And they were like, never. That's horrible. But it's the truth. It's like sometimes we need to be a little selfish, and making sure that we are really 100%, because we can't give 100% to our children, to the people in our lives, if we're not able to be 100% ourselves. And so that's a huge thing for me, as far as just encouraging people to, especially moms, to look at themselves and think, I am important, I am worth this. it's worth the time for me to have this break. And it's important for my family for me to have this break because of irritability, because of animosity that can accrue and just build over time. And then we are looking at burnout, we're looking at trauma in some cases, depending on how long we let this go, you know? So I think it's really important to think, okay, again, like I said, just be a primary for yourself, and then everything follows after that. I agree completely with like the staying hydrated and eating well. You also have to think about the fact that like when we don't eat well, when we don't energize our body with good nutrients and staying hydrated, we're talking about brain fog. We're not giving ourselves the energy that we need nutritionally to be able to think properly. So sometimes it's easy to make mistakes and not think clearly when we're not taking care of our bodies as well. And then that also just leads to our mind, you know, the mental health that we were all been talking about already. One thing I don't think that was really mentioned yet that I do want to focus on too is just really making sure that, you know, in order to not feel overwhelmed, in order to not feel anxiety, we really have to be more preemptive. I think we're a very reactional society. And so a lot of things that we do come after the fact. How do we deal with this now that it's become this bigger issue? If we're really being preemptive, if we plan accordingly, if we take the opportunity to really break things down into smaller pieces, I think that just alleviates so much anxiety and stress just in that moment of just being able to say, okay, this is a really big project. How much of this I really need to do right now? What is the primary issue? What are the things that I need to focus on right now? And really taking those things at heart. So that's something that I feel like, you know, we don't do enough of, is really planning things out. The more we plan, the more we can really deal with the bigger and the more, you know, surprising issues that come out of life. We can focus more on those issues when we've already got things kind of planned accordingly.
You know, I think that this question was a great segue when we think about the themes that came along with just the last few minutes. One, that we're not in this alone and that we need to pour into ourselves. And sometimes that means that we surround ourselves around some of our teammates. And so I think the next question is a great segue around what teammates can possibly do.
I want to acknowledge that the pandemic has brought an avalanche of stressors to parents and especially moms, working from home to virtual school to isolation from friends and family. Knowing that, what suggestions do you have for husbands and fathers like me to best support our wives and families?
So this question is from Rob Barron, a dad, husband, and leader in education and civic issues. And it's actually critical to the discussion when we think about how do we be of support to people, whether we're friends of mothers or whether we are partners or we're married, whatever that looks like. What does that support system look like? And Sharane, I'm going to start with you here. And again, folks in the chat, please pop your questions in if you have them. We're having a real talk conversation here that we'd love to invite you to be a part of with your questions. Go ahead, Sharane.
So yeah, how can partners really support moms in general? I think the biggest thing is to listen to them. Sometimes it's just, we just want to vent. We just want to complain. We want to vent a little bit. And sometimes just listening and being able to be there as a support is bigger than anything. I feel like, you know, just being able to say your piece and not have to feel filtered or frustrated or, you know, I don't know how many moms have said, I hate my kids. That's a horrible thing to say. It's like, no, I think we've been there. We've all been there as far as hating our jobs, hating the life that we're going through right now, being stuck inside the house. We were all dealing with those issues together. And so, yeah, we were hating a lot of things, I think, and it's okay to voice those things. Doesn't always mean that we mean them. And I think that sometimes, you know, we let it out and we feel like maybe that's part of it too. But just listening to people is huge. Now, I think that's different than fixing it. And I think that's whereas a lot of people try to, or get in trouble, I should say, is trying to fix the issue. Sometimes that's not what this is about. It's just about having a conversation and being able to vent accordingly. Otherwise, though, I think that being able to help someone with their anxiety and being able to help de-stress someone, either through de-escalation techniques, that might be something you're even like knowledgeable about or good at. But it could be even more simple than that, like taking on a daily burden that you know that your partner is going through, grabbing the groceries, picking up the kids, doing those like daily activities that they're always stressed about and thinking about can sometimes alleviate a lot of stress. It's something I just don't have to think about anymore. Another good thing too to think about too is being patient. So again, with moms having so much on their plates, there's just so many things to be on our minds and on our brains. And so sometimes it's just like, give us the time to process it so that we can be as focused as we need to be. And so again, like when we're doing all of those things in general, then we can really alleviate a lot of stress for moms. And I always say laughter is the best medicine. Being able to joke and be able to make moms laugh and have a good time helps the moms, helps the kids. So if anything, a good joke is always a good way to go too.
Awesome. I wish I had a good joke right now.
I know, I don't either.
Needless to say, I think that there is a great deal that folks can do to be partners. You know, Christina, sometimes when partners are trying to be helpful in their own way, they're doing it in a way that maybe the mom is not receiving it. What are some of the things that partners can do to make sure that we're not pushing ourselves on to folks with our agendas and what we know is right, and allowing them to still be their authentic self, but we're more of a teammate and not the boss?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, Deidre. I think some of that comes from an perspective, right? And so I'll just kind of maybe share some perspectives that I've heard. So as women and moms, I think we tend to have, I don't know whether it's societal pressure or our own internal pressure. We just have this kind of feeling or push to be the best everywhere, kind of like the best employee, the best mom, the best homemaker, right? And even on a good day, you know, we can feel like we're failing in any one of those categories. And that has really honestly nothing to do with our partner and what our partner is doing. A lot of that comes from just like external pressures or what we're doing for ourselves. And so if our partner doesn't really understand that, and then you have the layer of everything that's been going on over the last year, and I will tell you, it's not been a good day, right? And now we are feeling like we could easily be feeling failure in every component. And then topped onto that. So like we're feeling, I think many women, including moms, are feeling this like intense loss of, you know, safety and security and feeling of control. And now this loss of competency and like everything that we're doing. And so it just kind of like feels like the game has shifted. And, you know, even though, so I think if our partner could be doing everything right, but still not feel right because of all of that. And I think so just acknowledging, maybe acknowledging some of that feelings of loss and competency, and making that vulnerability okay, and doing the stuff that Sharane said for sure, but then making it okay to still have those feelings and kind of processing that, and just sitting with that and listening to that and like asking what they need, because it might be completely different than what your partner thinks.
Someone in the chat, Jamie, said in her household, they asked the question, do you want comfort or solutions? So you're giving people that option forwardly up front to place yourself in their lives. Which one do you want? I think that's an excellent suggestion. And there's another question in the chat along the lines of this topic, and it's around employers. What recommendations do you have for those leaders to alleviate stress to their employees? And Dr. Schreiber, you're in the medical industry. This has been a part, not only have you been caring for your patients, but you've also been doing a great deal of care for the people who are caring for those patients. What are the things that you all have done to kind of help draw some boundaries?
Well, I think Well, I wanted to first just say thank you to the other two presenters for such an important conversation about what our spouses can do. And then I'll touch on the employers and the work family, as I like to call it. But I do, so I've been married for 21 years, so I'm doing something right. And I just got a text from my husband that said, hey, I hope your day is going great, honey, heart, heart. And so I know something else is going right. And when I thought, oh, I'm doing a great job being married. But then I took the time to listen to the audiobook of the 5 love languages. And I was like, I actually needed a lot of marriage therapy that I didn't know about. It was so surprising to me. I felt satisfied with my marriage, but now I have a deeper understanding of how that is, why that is, and what I can do to make it better. I'm not getting any kickbacks to recommend this audiobook, but it is read by the author, and I love that. And as a busy working mom, we don't always have time to sit down and curl up with a book, so might as well listen on your commute. And these are the things that I learned, my little nuggets, is number one, that love is a feeling, but love is a choice, and love is active. And so partners can demonstrate their love. And so one of the other things I learned was, for us as moms, it's important to understand what our love language is, like what makes us feel loved, what relieves our stress, what do we need from our partner, and then to be able to effectively communicate that so they know what to do when we need it. And so just along those lines of like, do what the chat, the person in the chat said, do you need comfort or solutions? Knowing your love language helps your partner fill up your bucket, right? And so I just know I'm going to slaughter all the 5, but one is having positive affirmations. And it turns out that's one of my love languages, as I like to hear, hey, good job. Hey, you did a great job today. Like those things are part of what I need on a regular basis from my spouse. And he knows that. And then part of it is helping out around the house. And I think when I talk to moms in my practice, almost all of them want that as a love language, not conditional, not like I'll help you if you do this, or it's you're doing it because you love the other person. And so when you do that, it's a gesture and expression of love. And so helping out around the house, a lot of stressed out moms find that to be pretty sexy. And then the other ones are quality time, right? So busy, so much going on, kids, work, everything. Do you take quality time with your partner? Because sometimes that's your love language and you didn't even know it. And then when you slow down and you do that, you're like, oh, actually, this is what I needed to recharge and fill my bucket. So quality time. And then some of us have physical touch, and I'm not talking about all the touch. I'm talking about the gentle hand on the shoulder, the pat on the back rub, the head scratch, whatever, like being there for your partner physically as well as emotionally as many of our love languages. And then the final one I think is like showing love through gift giving. And for me, I don't need that. I just go to Amazon and do it myself. So but I think it's good to know what your love languages are and to be able to express them to your partner so that he or she knows that this is what you need in times of stress, and this is how I can be there for you specifically. Likewise, know what your partner's is, because giving love to others, being compassionate and contributing in some way actually makes us feel better and heals us. And so knowing that giving love is as healing as getting love is so important when we're working on our stress levels and working on our feelings of overwhelm that we experience through the COVID pandemic. But as far as how to feel supported at work and how to support
Dr. Schreiber, I think we're going to go to the next question, and I think we can actually talk through that in the next question. Okay. By the way, my love language is acts of service. Let's go to the third question.
Over the last year, working moms have experienced so much stress and anxiety, and it can lead to burnout. How can we take care of ourselves, but also help our friends navigate?
So that question was from Sally Dix, local mom and executive director of Bravo. Over the last year, working moms have experienced stress, anxiety, and burnout. How do we cope with this and all the chaos? And how do we help our friends who are struggling? We're going to start with Christina on this question, and we're going to round this out with the last question. Again, folks that are watching, please pop your questions in the chat if you have them. Christina?
All right, that's such a great question. So I think one of the hardest parts this those past year is because we've been so isolated. So we've been isolated from our work families, because many of us are working remotely. We've been isolated from our spiritual families. We've been isolated from our friends and our social networks. And we just all of the things that the human relationships, and we talked earlier about how important that connection and a human relationship is. Those connections, feeling connected to others, those personal relationships, and feeling connected to the larger whole is really what drives us as human beings to cope and to build resilience, right? So this whole past year, when all of this has been going on, that's when we've been the most isolated as ever before, right? So I think that's what's made it most challenging. So I think my number one suggestion would be, if either you're struggling or you have others that are challenging, is find ways to rebuild those connections and make those connections meaningful, right? Find meaningful ways to rebuild connections to get you, build your team, as we were talking about earlier, because we can't do this alone. That's my number one suggestion for you. And then in order to help, Sally asked, how do I help friends who are struggling? I think we touched on this a little bit, but I think when you reach out to others who are struggling, be prepared to get comfortable with the discomfort. So we as human beings, right? We naturally are not comfortable when it's uncomfortable. And if you reach out to a friend who's really struggling, your natural instinct is either going to be probably be one of two things: to kind of withdraw because it's uncomfortable for you, or to try to make that quick fix, like Sharane was talking about, oh, you're going to be okay, or maybe you should just try some exercise or whatever. No, I'm going to ask you to challenge you to not do that, and instead to just kind of lean into the discomfort. And I think the number one thing that you can do when someone's struggling is to really just be the person. We talked about it a little bit earlier, to just listen, non-judgmental listening and being is the best thing you can do to validate that person. Because if you withdraw or you try to quick fix, you're actually further isolating that. That's almost like, I know it's well-meaning, but it's almost the worst thing you can do, because it makes the person feel less heard, more isolated. And so be prepared to the best way to validate and to help that person is just to listen and to just hear. Be prepared to hear what they're and be there with them in it.
My dad used to tell me when I was a kid, Deidre, stop, think, and then react. And oftentimes when our friends are in distress and the people we love are in distress, it's just like react. But sometimes we've got to stop and think through things. Sharane, I'm going to go to you next. And I want to talk a little bit about stress, anxiety, and burnout. Those things don't happen on their own. They come from somewhere. And a lot of times it comes from the fact that we're not batting 100. We figure out through the day that we are imperfect. We're reminded through the day we are imperfect because maybe you were 5 minutes late to pick up the kid, or maybe you forgot to put a lunch together, and then the world crumbles because we are ineffective. Can you talk a little bit about, curbing our expectations of ourselves to help mitigate some of that stress and anxiety and burnout?
You actually hit the nail right on what I was going to make as my point. So Christina's point was about like the connections and everything and being, right? And so my thought was, setting boundaries for yourself and really being able to say, I'm giving my 100% and that's okay. It's okay that my 100% right now is maybe not going to be, Jackie's 100% or so-and-so's 100%, because we can't compare. And I think that's what we do to ourselves a lot in this, in everything I think that we do, honestly, is that we like to compare ourselves to each other. And sometimes my situation has to just be mine. I can't compare my life to Dr. Schreiber's or Christina's. And so that's just it's not fair to you. It's not fair to me. So again, I think it's kind of, just being and knowing yourself well enough to know your experience as your own and being okay with that. And so setting boundaries as far as limiting where you need to go and where you want to go. Sometimes it needs to be a discussion that you have with yourself, as well as just, again, if you're doing good self-care, you have to be okay with saying no. And I think that's hard for a lot of moms, is to say, no, I can't, or sorry, that's going to just be too much. It's stretching me too thin. Because we like to be on everything, every board, every sports team, every, we advocate for everything, and it's not always possible. And I think in this pandemic, especially, there was this unrealistic expectation, I think, that, well, because we weren't going to work and because we weren't going to school, that there were still these expectations that, well, you just have all this time to be able to spare and do other things. I think that, our kids not going to school is a good example of that, and us having to, rely on childcare or being available to help our kids get through the school program was a good example of, that's asking a lot, a lot of some of us. We can't go to work and be able to take our kids to school and watch them go through school. So that was a huge thing for a lot of the moms that I would cancel, as far as like, hey, this is too much for me. So knowing your boundaries and your limitations is, I think, really huge, and it will definitely keep you healthy and lessen your anxiety if you can say no.
Yeah, I think that's a wise lesson to all of us, is to compare ourselves to ourselves. We can only be the best us rather than the best Judy or the best Ellen. We can only be the best us. Dr. Schreiber, any thoughts on this question?
Well, Sharane, I sure hear you on the saying no part, and I'm a yes person. I love to be involved. I'm so passionate about so many things, so I like to say yes. And I honestly had to take your advice this year, because I couldn't function at my normal 100%. I just couldn't do it. And so I started saying no just for my own mental health. And I legit told those people, I have to say no because of my own self-care. I really do have to say no right now. I would love to do this in any other circumstance, but it's not in the cards for me right now. And it's okay. It's okay to watch out for yourself and make sure that you're protecting yourself. I did want to touch on reaching out to friends, because I actually know Sally, the person who was on the video. She is my friend, and I did talk to her during COVID. And I did talk to her about her job, and working at Bravo right now, it's tough because that's about culture and entertainment, which we've had to really eliminate during COVID. We can't go into crowds and watch shows and do those things. And so that did not make her job any easier. And so we all, as working moms, when our jobs become tons harder, we do need to do certain things to help protect our friends. So the first thing I would say is you have to be in tune. You have to be in tune to your friends. They might not be jumping over to you and saying, I need help. You need to really understand, think about them, hold them in your mind, and be like, how is my friend doing? I'm worried about my friend Sally. Like, it must be hard for her right now, right? So be in tune to needs. And then be active in your care and your love and your friendship, right? If someone is depressed, like seriously depressed, they won't have the energy to reach out to you. They won't, even if you say, what can I do to help? They just can't. They can't do that. They can't tell you what they need. So you have to be in tune to their needs, be active in your love for them. And then, as was already stated by our excellent panelists, you need to be what we call a mindful listener, right, to them. And I would say you don't have to fix things. However, there are certain points at which people do need a push into mental health treatment. An encouragement, a saying, hey, I know that people feel uncomfortable with thinking about getting treatment for their mental health, but I really think I can help you do that. If you need help, I think it would be good. So no, not always should you be like, you need a therapist, but sometimes you should. And so just remember that some people do need that push and that support. And that's what friends are for. So be in tune, be active in your love, be a mindful listener, and at a certain point, don't be afraid to help them make the next steps.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Schreiber. Well, there has been so much great information that has been shared today. We're going to pull away from our panelists really quickly. You all start thinking about your final remarks and advice that you want to share. But I do want you all to know that our panelists have put together a list of resources that they believe can be helpful to you. Now, mind you, this is not an exhaustive list of all of the resources that exist in our community, but these are ones that our experts believe can add some value. And so here's the list here. You'll also please tap into these resources and share them with others as well. You know, these have been great observations and great questions. And I appreciate each and every one of you all adding some value to this discussion. We're going to do those final remarks right now for you all. If you all are ready, we've got your list of resources up there. Take a picture of the resources, y'all. But one thing that I did want to tell you before we moved on, we'd like you to attend the next in this series, and that program is called Caring for Your Parents. That is on Thursday, May 20th from 12 to 1 p.m. Please register at dsmmagazine.com/lifting-the-veil -2021, I believe. And so please check that out. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe to our stunning print publications, DSM and IA. When you are a subscriber here, you can get print magazines, but you also get access to the digital newsletters. Plus, you get access to some special publications like Lifting the Veil and all of the invitations to some amazing events that this group puts on. And if you're looking for something a little lighter, but still important, join DSM for our next dinner party. This is one on April 29th. It's on a Thursday from 7 to 8. Again, you can register at dsmmagazine.com, but it includes a sophisticated high-end charcuterie platter at Hy-Vee and a fabulous gift bag from Nick Mick, a tremendous value. It's over $100 for $40. And you'll be able to actually pick up your items from 4 to 6 before the show starts. So when the show is happening, you'll have your charcuterie board and you'll have your gift bag, and then you'll have all of the entertainment that will be fun packed for an entire hour. We always have so much fun doing that. Let's go back to our experts now, because we want you all to hear their final remarks. Who shall we start with? Dr. Schreiber.
I can go first. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm so pleased to be invited here. And I think one of the most important topics that's come up is about what do you do? What's your first step when you're overly exerted, overly stressed out, burnt out, depressed? One of the first things that I do is a technique that's called sliming. And sliming sounds gross, but it is, you're already all doing it. It's when you call someone who you trust and you love and you know will understand what you're going to talk about. And then you just kind of dump all over them and tell them everything horrible that just happened to you. Here's what you need to know about sliming. It is a technique. It does make you feel better. But prior to sliming your best friend, you need to check in with them and say, is it an okay time for me to slime you right now? Because sometimes they're not in a spot where they can support your sliming. So it does work. It's great to do. Please do that. That's step one, right? Always let them know. Step two is recognize when you think you need extra support. And what I've discovered, because there's been a huge surge of adolescent mental health concerns over the last year, like more than I've ever seen in my entire life. It's terrible right now. We have like 10 kids who are on suicide watch right now in our care, and it's been worse than it ever has been. So it's got to be affecting everybody out there. Is what do you do when you're actually in a crisis? Like when you actually are tipping over the edge. If you're a mom who's ready to tip over the edge, you might find barriers in getting a psychiatrist or getting a therapist because there's hugely long wait lists. So what do you do? And one thing that you can do is the Unity Point Behavioral Health Urgent Care, which was recently opened, is a wonderful resource to walk in and say, I'm not okay. I really, really need help right now. And you'll be able to get that. And so I just want people to know that sometimes we do tip over the edge. And when we do, the best thing to do is get the help that you need. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your expertise, Dr. Schreiber, and thank you for all the dedication and hard work that you're pouring into your occupation. We're all beneficiaries of it. I see Sharane next, so we'll go to you next, Sharane.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking over Dr. Schreiber's advice. So I was like, man, that's good. I have some people I need to slime. But otherwise, though, I guess my biggest thing is, coping skills. I think this is a great time to do some self-reflection and even some, research on yourself as far as just being able to know what things work for you and what doesn't. And that could be, again, spending time with your family, although I hear that might be too much right now. But also being able to journal, listen to music, go for a run, do whatever you need to do to have that time for yourself to really be one with yourself. And it doesn't have to be about being with other people all the time. I think that's also another effect of the pandemic, is that we spent too much time together in some way, shapes, and forms. And so I think there was also this time of like needing to be alone and having me time. It's okay to have me time as well. And so finding some things to do as far as coping skills is great. And being able to use those to your advantage, whether it's deep breathing, yoga, meditation. There's so many different things that you can do to have as coping mechanisms. So that's one thing. The other big thing that I want to, I'm going to actually be the opposite of Dr. Schreiber, is we all need therapy. I don't think there's a point where I don't think that anybody couldn't use a second head or, someone else's mind or just ear to be able to have somebody who's unbiased, who's just willing to listen to you and be able to share your thoughts and your concerns with. That's what therapy is all about. And I'm all about prevention. So for me, it's like, why deal with it when you're already having the heart attack? Why not do some preventative care, like go to therapy or go to talk to somebody and prevent the heart attack from happening in the first place? I think that we still think about mental health as being the last thing on our books as far as things to look out for and deal with. And for me, it's like, if I'm already getting my coping mechanisms and dealing with them before they even come, when that big piece of chaos comes rolling towards me, I've already got skills to deal with it in the best way possible. And I can use my therapist or whoever I need to talk to as a backup or a bigger support for me when those times come. So that's my 2 cents. So
yep, we're all in this together. As a mentor said to me, doctors need doctors, lawyers need lawyers, psychiatrists need psychiatrists. Christine, you get the final word.
Oh no. All right. Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It was a great conversation. I was just gonna say, first, I feel bad we didn't get to, I think it was Maria's question about employers. And so just really quickly, I was just going to say of course, something we've been working on a lot, because I do have quite a few employees. Just really quickly, we've really worked hard to set, okay, here, what are our expectations? What are the absolute things we have to do to meet our mission, our goals, whatever that is? And then how can we be the absolute most flexible we can in order to make that still happen, right? We do mental health care, so there's certain things we absolutely have to have, but how can we do that? Don't be afraid, I would say to leaders and managers, to really rethink things, because you don't want to lose your amazing workers, right? And so to completely just tune in and understand what's going on with them, to be as flexible as possible, while still being really clear about what are the expectations of what has to happen. And I guess that's what I would say. I loved your idea about the delayed emails, like no emails after certain times and have them delayed and pop up the next morning, because you're right, those boundaries, it gets blurred when we're working at home. But I guess that would be my 2 cents on that. And then my final word is just, again, I've been talking about this with myself and my employees a lot, is don't forget to give each other and ourselves some grace, because, I've been thinking a lot about that word, as that we just, we really, really have to work in a space where we are all just supporting each other, and how not only supporting each other, but supporting ourselves to kind of get through this. everything is new. I mean, all of these problems and things that are coming at us are like first time problems and first time things. And we, again, all have this kind of new sense of how do we create this new sense of psychological safety for ourselves and each other. I mean, these are things that we've never really done and dealt with before. And so let's give ourselves and each other some grace to kind of figure it out together. And it's okay to not be okay. And let's normalize talking about that. Which has kind of been the theme of our conversation today. But thank you again for having such a great conversation. Thanks, Susanna, as well for leading it and bringing us all together.
Awesome. Well, thank you again to each and every one of you all. We also want to thank our sponsors, Delta Dental, Clive Behavioral Health, Division of Mercy One, Employee and Family Resources of Iowa, and IMT Insurance. And thank you to each and every one of you all who have tuned in for the discussion around mental health and working to lift this veil. We hope to see you at our next program. Again, that is May 20th. Go ahead and register now and get it out of the way. Put it in your calendar. But again, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. If you don't remember anything from today, remember this: you are not alone and you were never meant to be. And there's a community out there that's waiting, and perhaps you haven't connected to the right folks yet, but you're bound to. Just don't give up. Thank you so much.